now that our scene's set up, we're going to go ahead and start modeling some of our very basic elements in here. So let's go to the front view. From here, it's just a matter of kind of identifying what shapes we need to build out these objects. So I'm thinking for the face itself, we're going to use a cylinder, probably 2 cylinders, one for this outer metal ring, one for the metal ring that sits underneath the glass, and then on top of that we're probably going to use maybe some kind of sphere or something, just to give that kind of domed look that we can use for the glass. And then for these spikes we're probably going to use cubes, and we're going to modify those just to have a bit of a point to them. And then for these, the handles, the clock hands, we're probably going to start with, again, a cube, and then just build it out. And that might be it. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with the outer ring of the face. So I'm going to use a cylinder. So if I go up here to add, mesh, cylinder, we get this cylinder in the world. So I've mentioned this before, but it's really important that we have these creation properties that kind of get hidden away down here. And when you click that, you get some options that you can use. The most important one right now is how many vertices we're going to use. So if we go to our perspective view, the vertices are kind of dictating how much resolution we have, right, for this, this outside piece. Because we're going to be looking down on it like this, we'll be rotating this in a minute so it actually faces the right way. We want to kind of get an idea of how close the player is going to be to this object. So the player is probably never going to be more closer to this object than I am now within the viewport. So I can go ahead and start playing around with how much resolution I actually need to represent a nice edge to that shape. So in this case, because it's probably the largest piece of the object, I'm probably going to go a little higher. So let's go 36. And generally you'll want an even number as well. And that way it kind of is a bit easier to manage in terms of symmetry. So if I was to go and have a look at this, one key thing for me is to make sure that I have an edge on each one of these axes, so that I can mirror both left to right and then both top to bottom if I have to. So I could just model 1/4 of this and just rotate and join the elements together to make the final piece. So in this case that's not going to be that big a deal, but it might be useful for different pieces, especially depending on how much complexity is in the piece. So I'm pretty happy with that. From here I'm just going to go ahead and rotate. Because I want exactly 90 degrees, I'm going to go here in the object properties, and where it says rotation X, I'm just going to change this to 90 exactly, hit enter, and there we are. So I'm going to go back into the front view now, and I'm going to scale this down. But before I do that, I'm going to change my viewport shading to this, which is a wireframe. So, and then now I can see straight through the object, I can arrange this and scale this more appropriately. So bear in mind, this isn't perfect, and that's because the reference picture isn't perfectly orthographic. No picture is really, but we're working within that constraint. So rather than moving our mesh off of center grid, what we're going to move is the image itself. So I'm going to make this reselectable. I'm going to go back to my move, and I'm going to try to get this to center again, just very roughly. So that's probably good. And then I can go ahead and start building out the rest of it. So when I've created this, you can see that it's very, very deep. We don't need it to be that deep, so I'm going to scale on the Y here and make it to approximately how thick I expect this clock to be. So something like that. Yeah, great. So from here, let's go ahead and start building out. Actually, I'll scale this up just a bit more just to reach the outsides. Yeah, great. So now we're going to go ahead and start making these spikes. So what I might do is I might make, on the same note, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the empty again, if I can. There we just so that this line lines up to my axes here. And I'm going to hold the shift key, and that's just going to make my motions, my mouse movements a bit smoother, a bit more subtle, so that I can position it a bit more neatly. And again, I'm going to use that to kind of center. So that's my true center, we could call that. You know, we do have only one element pretty much that's center, but that's probably good because we're going to, you know, create one of this spike that touches the clock face, and one of this that actually touches this kind of this metal cylinder that goes and attaches to it. And then I'm going to duplicate them all the way around the object itself. So now that I'm happy with that, let's make that deselectable. And I might just make this one first. So I'm going to start by creating a cube. So I'm going to go add mesh cube, and it's quite massive at the moment. I'm going to roughly kind of put it into place. I'm not going to go crazy. I'm pretty happy with the standard cube shape. So I'm not going to modify any of the creation options, sorry. Awesome. So that's roughly where I want it to be. Notice that I didn't move it off of the axes here because I want that to be perfectly centered. From here, I just want to move this top piece all the way up. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to vertex mode. In that same menu, I'm going to go occlude, so that whenever I drag select, it's actually selecting the vertices I can't see behind the ones in front, so that when I move it, they all move together. And then at the top here, I'm just going to scale it in. Awesome, cool. So now that that's done, again, I'm going to have another look at this. I'm going to kind of gauge how thick I want the thing to be. Probably roughly like that, and I probably want it to be a bit further forward. Awesome, great. So now that I've done that, let's go ahead and make this cylinder here. So again, add mesh cylinder. This one is massive. I think I can get away with 6 because this is very, very small. I could probably get away with 4, but I'm going to make it 6 in this case. And then I'm going to go ahead and rotate again in X by 90. Oh, excuse me, I don't want that at all. Let's take that back. I'm just going to scale it down. Did not want that at all. And again, I'm just going to kind of roughly put this in place to the right size. And I'm going to scale up. And I'm not going to mind that it's, you know, pushing through other parts of the object. Because we don't see those, it won't matter very much. And because we're not taking up any more geometry, it's completely fine as well. Don't go too far because it will affect our texture space, and we'll learn about that later. But for now, just know it's okay to push into different objects, different meshes within our scene, as long as they're not sitting on the same exact plane. So I'm going to roughly push this back into place as well. Great, awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and make one of these other pieces here. So I might do the left piece here, and instead of creating it again, I might just duplicate this one. So I'm just going to press Control D, and you'll notice that when I do that, without even clicking any other button, if I was to move the mouse around, it would drag with it. In this case, we might want that, but a lot of the time we won't. So to get out of this, we can just right click, and it will put the object back to where the original one was. Bear in mind that they're now sitting on top of each other, so you definitely want to be able to move those before you do anything else at all. So I'm just going to move it down and across, and now I'm going to rotate. Actually, before I do that, I might scale this bottom piece to be a bit fatter, and I'll make sure, yep, great, that's still on. And I'm just going to scale these out a bit because I know these pieces are a bit fatter. And I might leave that one exactly the same. Actually, no, I'll scale it in just a little bit, just to give a bit of difference in those two pieces. And now I'll rotate it roughly into place. And I probably want to tweak this a little bit later, but for now that's probably good. And so rather than minding exactly where this piece sits in the image, I'm thinking more about where is the center between these two different poles here. So probably about there. And one thing I don't want is this to be so high. So I'm just going to push it down. There we are. So that's probably good. That's probably good for now. Great. Awesome. So let's have a look at that so far. All right, so we have some of the major pieces here.